Story 1. I committed the ultimate romantic gesture, and he gave his ex the credit and a ring. My best friend and I had been in that weird friend zone limbo where we were obviously into each other, but no one would say it. After he broke up with his girlfriend of 3 years, things shifted between us, especially during this music festival we went to with our friend group. We stayed up talking until sunrise, shared a blanket during the concerts, that kind of thing. Then everything went sideways over a tiny gold earring. We were loading his van to head home when he suddenly lost it. He was ripping through muddy camping gear, dumping out bags, getting more frantic by the second. His grandmother's gold hoop, the only thing he had left of her, was gone. Our whole group spent over an hour searching that van. Nothing. On the drive home, he mentioned he'd called his ex the night before to tell her about losing it. Wait, he called his ex? While you were at the festival together having your sunrise moments? Apparently losing the earring had hit him harder than expected, and in a moment of weakness, he'd reached out. She'd been sympathetic, told him she was sorry. Typical ex stuff. The rest of the ride was silent. After we got back, I kept thinking about how wrecked he looked. So I told everyone I forgot my phone charger and drove back to the festival grounds. The place was mostly empty except for some cleanup crews. I searched that muddy field where his van had been parked until my phone died. Kept going in the dark, crawling around on my hands and knees like an idiot. Just as the sun came up, my fingers hit something small and hard in the dried mud near where his tire had been. The earring, caked in dirt, but definitely his. You crawled through mud in the dark for this, man. I can't even... Here's where I screwed up. Standing there at 6 a.m, covered head to toe in mud, I realised showing up at his door would look desperate. Like I'd spent all night searching for his dead grandmother's earring just to win him over, which, okay, was technically true, but still. So I went home, cleaned it carefully, and mailed it to him in a padded envelope with no return address. Oh God, this anonymous thing is going to bite you in the arse somehow, isn't it? 3 days later, he posted about getting back together with his ex. The caption was all about how devastated he'd been about the earring, how he'd called her that night from the festival, and then, get this, how it mysteriously showed up in his mailbox. He was convinced she'd driven out there and found it. Called her the most selfless, romantic person he'd ever known. She never corrected him. She never corrected him? The audacity of taking credit for something that meaningful. I'm actually speechless. Last month at a mutual friend's party, I saw her wearing it on a chain around her neck. When she caught me staring, she didn't look confused or guilty. She just gave me this small smile and touched the earring, like we were sharing some inside joke. She's wearing it? Like a trophy? I would have lost my mind right there in that party. They moved in together last week. He proposed with his grandmother's ring. Apparently the earring inspired him to ask his mum for it. And I've never said a word because what's the point? It's one thing for her to let him believe a lie. It's another to wear my muddy all-nighter around her neck like some trophy she never earned. The worst part? If I'd just handed him the earring that morning, covered in mud and looking pathetic, we probably would have had a moment. Maybe even the moment I'd been hoping for. Instead, my anonymous gesture became the foundation of their whole relationship. Sometimes being mysteriously romantic is just being an idiot with extra steps. Story 2. I spent $500 to watch my crush get back with her ex. The single most expensive and humiliating night of my life started with me overhearing a girl from my economics class talking about a concert. We'd been friendly all semester, group projects, study sessions, the usual. I'd been looking for the right moment to ask her out, but nothing felt natural. Then one day after class, I heard her talking to her friend about this indie band doing a surprise show downtown. She was practically begging her friend to try and get tickets with her, saying she'd been obsessed with them since freshman year, but the show had sold out instantly. That's when my brain decided to be helpful. I could get tickets from a reseller. I could casually mention I was going. We could end up there together. It would be perfect. The resale price was insane. Almost $500 for one ticket. That was my entire laptop fund, and mine was already wheezing through every Zoom call and crashing during essays. But I convinced myself this was an investment. One night, one concert, one chance to connect over something she actually cared about. $500? And your laptop is dying. I'm getting second-hand financial anxiety just reading this. I found a ticket, emptied my savings, sent her a text the day before saying I'd managed to snag one and would see her there. She sent back 3 exclamation points and a smiley face. I spent the next 24 hours rehearsing casual conversation starters. The venue was one of those converted warehouses where you can barely move without elbowing someone. I spent the first 20 minutes just trying to spot her in the crowd, getting increasingly sweaty and anxious. Finally saw her near the back bar. She wasn't alone. Some guy was with her, and they were standing really close. Not just friend close. He had his hand on her lower back, and she was looking up at him with this expression I'd never seen on her face before. Then I noticed his shirt. A faded tour shirt from the band that was literally playing 10 feet away from us. The hand on the lower back. That's the universal "we're together" signal. And he's wearing the band's shirt. Of course he is. I stood there like an idiot, still holding my overpriced beer, watching them. He leaned in to say something in her ear. She nodded and smiled. Not a polite smile. A real one. My stomach just dropped. That's when she glanced over and saw me. Her whole face changed. Eyes went wide, mouth opened slightly. She said something to the guy and pointed at me. He turned around, looked me up and down, then back at her with this confused expression. She started walking toward me, and every step made me want to sink into the sticky floor. When she reached me, she had to yell over the music. "Hey, I didn't know. Thanks for letting me know you were coming." Her voice was doing that thing where it goes up at the end even though it's not a question. "This is so random. So that's actually we used to date. He surprised me with tickets tonight. We're kind of figuring things out." She's explaining you to him like you're some random classmate who happened to show up. $500 to become a footnote in their reconciliation story. I nodded like this made perfect sense, like I hadn't just blown my entire laptop fund to third wheel her reconciliation. Cool, I shouted back. "I'm gonna go closer to the stage." "Yeah, totally, enjoy the show." I pushed through the crowd in the opposite direction and left after 2 songs. Didn't even stay for the headliner. The next morning, we had our 3-hour economics lecture. She sat 2 seats away instead of next to me like usual. The professor droned on about opportunity costs while I stared at my dying laptop screen, the irony not lost on me. After class, she caught up with me in the hallway. Opportunity costs during an economics lecture, while your laptop wheezes because you spent its replacement fund on... The irony is actually physically painful. "About last night," she started, then paused. "I'm sorry if that was weird. I had no idea he was planning that. We've been broken up for months, but..." She shrugged. "Anyway, I just wanted to say thanks for being cool about it. Being cool about it. Like I'd done her some favour by not making a scene at her romantic reunion. I had to call my parents that weekend and explain that my laptop had finally died right before finals. The lecture about fiscal responsibility lasted almost as long as that economics class. Spent the next 2 weeks finishing my papers on the ancient computers in the library basement. Keys sticking every 3rd letter, surrounded by freshmen who couldn't figure out how to print. Every time I had to restart after a crash, I thought about those 3 exclamation points she'd sent. $500 to learn that enthusiasm doesn't mean what you think it means. The universe has a sense of humour, though. The band broke up 2 months later. She and her ex lasted about as long. But by then I was dating someone else. Someone I met at the library when she helped me figure out why the ancient computer kept eating my documents. Wait, you met someone while struggling with those ancient library computers? Hold up, that's actually kind of amazing. Turns out the best connections happen when you're not trying to engineer them. They just come from being in the right place with a broken laptop and a willingness to ask for help. Story 3. I helped my crush move, then blew up his secret marriage. What's the craziest thing you've ever done for a crush? So there was this guy at work. Different department, but we'd been chatting more lately. And yeah, I had it pretty bad for him. He'd been complaining for weeks about his living situation. Said his sister had moved in after a bad breakup and was making his life hell. Apparently she was drinking too much, bringing random guys over, the whole mess. Saturday morning, I get this frantic text. His sister was at some wellness retreat for the weekend and he needed to get his stuff out before she came back and made a scene. Said all his buddies were tied up with weekend plans. Then he mentioned remembering I had a truck from when we'd talked about my weekend Home Depot runs. He remembered you had a truck. Of course that's what he remembered about you. I should have thought it through more, but honestly, I was just excited he'd thought of me. The apartment building was way nicer than I expected for someone dealing with a nightmare roommate. He met me outside, kept saying we had to hurry, that the neighbours knew his sister and might text her if they saw him moving stuff. Inside, the place was pristine. Like professionally decorated pristine. Not exactly what you'd expect from someone with a chaotic, drunk sister crashing there. But whatever. I started grabbing boxes he'd pointed to. That's when I noticed the kitchen counter. There was this fancy espresso machine with 2 mugs next to it. One said his, and one said hers. You know, those cheesy couple mugs. He saw me looking and quickly said his sister bought them as a joke when she moved in, trying to be funny about the situation. His sister bought couple mugs as a joke? That's the lie he went with? Then I went to grab a box from the bedroom and saw the closet was open. It was split down the middle. Men's clothes on one side, women's on the other. All organised by colour. The women's side had work clothes, not the party clothes you'd expect from his description. I asked him about it. He fumbled, said she'd taken over half his closet, that she was weirdly organised when sober. But his face was doing this thing where it got all red and blotchy. The final straw was when I moved a box and a frame fell out. It was from their honeymoon in Cabo. The engraving on the frame had the date, less than 2 years ago. A honeymoon photo. Game over. There's no explaining your way out of an engraved honeymoon frame. I just stood there holding it while he tried to explain that it was complicated, that she wasn't really his sister, that they were separated but still living together for financial reasons, that she was impossible to talk to, that he was going to tell me eventually. I set the frame down and said I had to go. He kept talking, trying to explain, but I was already heading for the door. Sitting in my truck, I did something that probably wasn't my finest moment. Her name was on that honeymoon frame, first and last. Found her on social media pretty easily since she worked at some local real estate firm and had her photo all over their website. Made a fake account and sent her a message saying her husband was moving out while she was gone. Included a photo I'd snapped of the boxes in the hallway. You took a photo of the boxes? The presence of mind to document his betrayal while in shock. Respect. She replied within an hour asking who I was. I didn't respond, just blocked him everywhere and tried to forget the whole thing. Found out later through the office gossip that he'd moved back in with his parents after what everyone was calling a messy separation. Guess she came home early from that retreat. From trying to sneak out while she's at a wellness retreat to living with his parents. That's what we call natural consequences. The crazy part? He tried to add me on LinkedIn last month. Like, seriously. I left that request pending. Some bridges you just leave burned. Story 4. I crashed my crush's support group thinking it was a writing club. There was this guy at my office who was exactly my type. Smart, quiet, always reading during lunch. I'd been trying to find an excuse to talk to him for months. One afternoon, I walked past his desk right as he was packing up. He had this novel about creative writing that he'd been carrying around all week. I overheard him tell a co-worker he'd see them at the community centre Wednesday night for their group meeting. He mentioned something about how it had really helped him process things. My brain immediately went, writing workshop, made perfect sense. Oh God, this is already going somewhere terrible. I tried looking it up online that night, but the community centre's website was useless, just listed private group meetings for every Wednesday slot. No details. I figured I'd just show up and wing it. Worst case, I'd pretend I got the wrong room. Wednesday came around and I grabbed my copy of White Noise, mostly because it looked intellectual and I needed something to carry. Found the room, took a breath, and walked in. The vibe was immediately off. 8 people sitting in a circle, including my crush. Dead silence. Everyone turned to stare at me. I slid into an empty chair, gripping that book so hard my knuckles went white. A woman at the front was talking softly about rebuilding trust. I was still desperately trying to convince myself this was just a really serious writing group. Rebuilding trust? Oh no, oh no, no, no. Then she turned to my crush. He looked exhausted in a way I'd never seen at work. Started talking about how hard the last few months had been since his girlfriend cheated on him with his best friend. All the heat rushed to my face at once. Behind the facilitator, a small whiteboard said, "Moving forward, a healing circle." I am dying. Actually dying of second-hand embarrassment right now. The facilitator turned to me with this warm smile. She said it was nice to see a new face, that it took courage to join them. Asked if I wanted to share what brought me there. Everyone stared, including him. I saw the exact moment he recognized me from work. His expression shifted from curious to wary to something like pity. The pity. That's somehow worse than anger would have been. I couldn't lie about being cheated on. Couldn't admit I'd basically followed him. Just mumbled something about having the wrong room and bolted. Next day at work was brutal. I dodged him all morning, but he caught me by the coffee machine. I expected anger, but he was weirdly calm. Thanked me for not telling our co-workers about the group. Said it was really personal for him, and he hoped I understood why he needed to keep it private. Then he glanced at the book I was still carrying around like an idiot. "For what it's worth," he said, "that's a great book." We both knew I'd never made it past chapter 3. The awkwardness is suffocating. He transferred to a different department 2 weeks later. Heard through office gossip that his ex had been someone from our company, which explained a lot. I finally finished White Noise 6 months later. It really was a great book. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and check out this video next.